Welcome to Agency Acquisitions and Exits. I'm your host, Peter Lang. Today I'm joined by Jamie Birch, founder of JEB Commerce, a performance marketing agency focused on affiliates. And at its height, it was doing $3 million in revenue, a 27-person team, but they got hit during COVID. About 30%, 40% of the business was wiped out. Jamie was tired, and he shares with us how from that impactful time, his team decided to take the reins. No broker, no private equity, but selling directly to his employees. After grooming his leadership, after putting years of systems in place, Jamie helped facilitate the employees buying him out. Since stepping away, he was able to launch new projects. And we talk about how he was smart during the 19 years of his ownership of that business. He diversified his personal income. Lots of lessons on an agency lifestyle journey that probably sounds familiar. Let's dive in. Then, Jamie, let's dive in. Thank you for
Awesome.
joining me.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm super excited to be here, and thanks for reaching out.
All right, so quick origin stories needed. When did you break out of like the hustle years, and when did the business peak? So get us up to speed before you thought about exiting the company.
Yeah, so it started out of necessity in 2004, and it took about 2 years to really peak. But I would say probably 2 years before COVID, 2018 is when it really peaked. We had the most people, the most clients, and the most revenue. And it kind of hung around there until COVID. And then, like many businesses in COVID, it took a hit. But I had always been building the business. Someone handed me Built to Sell, that book, probably 5 years in. And so I had always been building the business to sell, but honestly, with very little confidence that that would ever happen. So it was probably during COVID that I started to think about that. But we had been training employees and building systems for a decade in order that if there was that opportunity, that it would be seamless. And the agency was named after me. So we had to really make sure processes and systems and sales and operations were tight so that it could sell. Agencies, a lot of times, are tied to their owners. And so we had to do a lot of focus on that to make sure that was a possibility.
Before COVID hit, because you had a good percentage of your clients in travel, how many
Yeah.
people were you? And if you were to describe the services you were providing, what were they?
Yeah. So we had, I think at our height, we had about 27 people. Most in our location in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I think we had two people, one in Denver and one in the South. And we provided affiliate marketing services for online retailers. So we set up their affiliate programs, ran them, managed them, recruited partners. At one time, we had an analytics division. So we provided SEO and general site analytics, recommendations on how to improve those things. But our primary role, 98% of our clients and our revenue, was affiliate marketing.
You were telling me that the opportunity to sell was kind of internal driven versus external. Share with the audience what that looked like when the team was like, we haven't seen Jamie in a while, or he has other things going on.
Yeah, yeah. So COVID was pretty tough. When I was 25 to 45 running the business, you are ready to tackle dragons to fight those battles. And COVID was tough. I'm sure a lot of your listeners have fought that too. And there was a time where I had just, if you knew my personality, and I have done a lot of personality tests, and they all say pretty much one thing. Communication and strategy are big for me, but I'm a starter. And then I like to set that up and move and start other things. So 19 years in one place was not what anyone would have expected. So there was a point where it just hit me of I'm not the owner, I'm not the CEO to do this anymore. But it wasn't me coming up with that realization. I was actually at one of my staff. They're a married couple. They both worked my entire professional career. I've worked with both of them almost my entire career. So I've known them for a really long time. They become incredibly close to me. They worked for me for 10 years at that agency. at least 10 years. And I was at their place because we had no office then after COVID. So I was at their house and we were talking about things. And just another obstacle presented itself. I just had nothing in the gas tank. I had nothing left. I was already running on empty. And I noticed, and they noticed that I was missing client meetings. I was doing things as an owner that I would never allow my staff to do. I would instruct and teach and motivate and drive that we treat people a certain way. We treat our clients and we deliver. And I had started to kind of relax off of that. I would reschedule meetings when I wouldn't ever allow anyone. And so they were noticing that. And when that next client had to leave, I just didn't know what to do. They'd seen me at maybe my lowest professional point of how the hell am I going to do this again? And I don't think I want to do this again. And she looked at me and said, you don't have to do this. And I was like, what are you talking about? I have to do it. It's got my name. This is who I am. I am JEB Commerce. This is at the time, you could really say this was all of me. Like I put everything in who I am in this business, and everything I felt I was this business. So she just kind of let that sit there. And I'll be honest, I started crying. I had sort of this moment was pretty poignant. And I was like, what do you mean? And she goes, you've been working with us for a decade. You've been training us on how to do things. We've been on your executive team. Your executive team is ready to take this over. So you need a break at the very least. You need time away and you have other things you want to do. You have a family. Just go take a break. So I went home and talked to my wife and she was like, I've been telling you that for 3 years that you need a break. And she echoed the same thing. There was a lot of room provided for that because 6 years prior, I started another business with one of my best friends, and that had taken off. Within that, she created that space, and within that, I got to look at that and go, you know what? I'm getting 100% of my stress from 10, 15% of my revenue, and the other business is generating a lot more, well beyond what I needed, and it's very little stress. With all that in mind, I was like, you know what? I do need to take a break. So I decided to step down and let the people that have been developing and running their own systems, and I was teaching them our way, that we always have a way. And every quarter we look at that way. And if there's a better way to do that way, we create that and we continue this continuous improvement cycle. So I've been demonstrating that for years. And they picked it up and said, just go take some time. You're not healthy. We're worried about you. Your family's worried about you. And you've done enough of a good job with us. Let us take over. So I made that announcement the next day and they took it from there. And then I got a call from those two and my director of sales. And they asked me what I really wanted to do and what is the ideal situation for me. And I said, it'd be great if I could walk away. I could sell. You guys run it from here. You guys buy it and I go show horses and focus on my other things. And they said, yeah, that's what we thought. So we'd like to do that. And then began a 6-month conversation where we really just had to figure out a valuation that we both agreed on. And then, so I stepped down, I think June 1st or July 1st, and January 3rd, we closed on the sale of the business. And I walked away and I check in every now and then because I love them to death. They're all very good friends of mine and they're doing great. Their families are growing, the business is growing, and it's been great ever since.
A few things in there I want to unpack. So how large was the agency when you decided to make that announcement? And so what was the size of the business that they were buying from you at that size? And then from that, I want to get into friendships and negotiations around valuations and approaches when we look back are hopefully positive. I want to hear about that. But it took a while. What was that? Essentially 5 months.
Yeah, it's 5,
Or
6
more.
months.
Yeah.
So the size of the company, I think it was we had come down about 40% from our height during COVID. And like you said, we had a big emphasis on travel. That all went away pretty fast during COVID and been slow. It was slow to get back. So we're probably 40% down from where we were, both in terms of revenue, clients, and but they had gotten a lot better and even more efficient over that time. So I think we were down probably 45% from our top. As far as negotiating with the team, there are a couple of things that made it really easy. There was no, as far as discovery, and I had gone through, there were two other agencies that tried to buy us over the 19 years that I had run that company. And so, discovery is always very stressful. And I went pretty far down that road with one company and not very far with the other. But one of the buyers and new owners was my executive assistant and did all our accounting. So she did a lot of my personal accounting and the company's accounting. So between her, our CPA, and my wife, I had zero secrets, and they all are friends. So that was one thing that made it really easy. There was nothing to hide, nothing to craft.
So unpack that for the agency owner who is maybe gating profits and has a negative association with disclosing that to the team. What made you feel so comfortable sharing financials, personal, and the like with these people who worked for you and were also your friends?
Yeah, well, it was partly I didn't want to bear probably 10 years into the company. I was like, I'm bearing 100% of the commitment and the stress and everything of making payroll. And at that time, I had leaders in the company and I could tell, and they were vocalizing like, we need to know where we're at so we can help you grow this company. And so there was a long time where I did gatekeep. And that really came from one of probably the biggest lessons I learned within the first maybe 5 years is that business isn't my other checkbook. That's not my family's, oh, I want to go on vacation. Well, there's this other checkbook I can go use. When you're not running things correctly, you don't want to share. And that's not always the reason why people gatekeep, but sometimes it is. And so once we moved out of that and we really separated both things, there wasn't anything really to hide from the people leading my department. And I didn't want to bear the burden of having to grow, having to make payroll, all of this by myself. I wasn't the only one impacting those things. They were too. So we just developed a report, a CEO dashboard that I then gave to the team. And I did have a coach at the time walk me through like, you can't share everything without them knowing what it is. So you can't throw a P&L out unless you've educated on that P&L. You can't throw a cash flow statement out unless you've educated. So we took a period of time of here's what a cash flow statement is. Here's how it works. And let me go through some of the things that are on ours that you may not be aware of. And we went through a period of, we talked about what is total compensation? What's the difference between that and someone's salary? And why does the owner get a draw? And how does that, all this accounting kind of figure out? So there was a lot of guidance from my coach on how to roll that out. And then every quarter, I'd roll out, an added bit of information. So it probably took a year to where, I think there's only one person who had access to like the bank account, but they pretty much had everything. But again, like one of the things that allowed me to do that is the first couple of years, and a lot of businesses run this way is, every bit of profit coming out, they're either going to take that and go use it. It's kind of natural to, hey, we're doing well. I want to go do great things. I'm working really hard. And then you keep those profits in there. But just managing the money made it a little easier to share that with everybody. And then the reporting made it easier. And as far as like the friendships, they had been getting those reports for so long that we just had between me and the executive team, we just had no secrets at all. Oh, here's where I was going. Sorry, I didn't have my coffee yet today. Those first 5 years did what a lot of business owners, I spent a lot of money. After that, we started to look at that profit and go, how do we invest it in this company? But then I also said, what else? can I do with that? Using those profits to invest in something else. And now we have some real estate holdings. We have three other businesses, but we invested in one other business that, because of all the lessons I learned in the first one, we grew 10 times as fast, five times as large. And that company now has 120 employees and it's doing about 10 million a year. And so all of that provided a lot of a safe space to be able to say, like, hey, I want you guys to come in. I want you guys to help me lead this company. And I'm going to teach you all this stuff that I've learned. And then I'm going to share this all with you. And then we're going to get together. We're going to make these decisions together. So then when it came time to sell and to negotiate with friends, there wasn't a single bit of posturing. The reason it took 6 months, and this is the only reason, is when we started that conversation, I was like, you know what? Let's not spend money on an attorney. Let's just figure out this agreement on our own. So it took 4.5 months trying to come up with an agreement that it took our attorney an hour to come up with. And we didn't really know you would run these things. We had not an earn out, but they're making payments, which also investing in that other company made it very easy to come up with an arrangement that really worked for both of us. We didn't know there was a title company that would handle that. We thought the agreement, I don't know if I still have it, but the agreement that we were working, and really it was me working on it, that agreement was so convoluted, just ignorant. I just didn't know. And that's what we spent 4.5 months doing. And then we just we said, look, we can't really figure this out. Let's back this out. Let's go to the attorney. And we spent maybe $5,000 to come up with a really easy agreement. The valuation was super easy to go through because we all had all the info. So it was really, what's the formula you're okay with? Well, I think this is it. Well, what do we had some assets to kind of figure out. We had to negotiate. There were a couple things. There was a software package that I had developed that company essentially owned, and I wanted to keep that. So there were a few things, and it really was like, I'd like to keep this. Yeah, that sounds good. Here's the valuation. And we went back maybe twice, back and forth. But it was pretty simple after that.
Did you mention this? How much rope did you give your counterparts in paying you because you had other things that were generating household income and contributing more substantially versus what you would have wanted if you didn't have that?
A lot of rope. And I truly didn't need, if that money didn't come in and I closed the business, I was okay. We were fine. My kid's still going to college. I'm still showing horses. I'm maybe not traveling as far to show horses, and maybe the type of horses I get aren't as expensive, but it just made it so simple and so easy. And I like, they're very good friends of mine. I want them to be successful. I want to see this agency, whether they end up keeping my name for, the name forever or change it. I want to see that last for, as long as they want. And so we were able to work a deal that really worked for them and allowed them, coming out of COVID, there were challenges that many marketing agencies are still facing now. There were a lot of challenges. I wanted them to be able to engage those and overcome those. So having those other things that were producing revenue for me, that was probably, I would love to tell you like that was the plan. We were going to invest in here. I would love to say I was that forward thinking and that intelligent. It didn't really happen that way, but it did work out. We used all the lessons that grew really, really well. And that did provide a way. So even at times, if they need to, reorder how things are being paid, there's not a lot of pressure for them having to do that. So it was, or not being able to do that.
Let's unpack that for a moment, because there's a few camps in buying out a founder. One is work directly with the owner, the seller, kind of figure out a financing package that the seller is going to hold the note and paper for.
Yeah.
And then there's going and getting a loan and putting debt on the business to accelerate payments to that owner, which then brings an external pressure in regards to financial performance. So you have less leeway, more constraints on how you have to manage and pay that debt service. Why was this way good for you? And you kind of touched on some of those ability to really support the business going forward, but double down on that a bit.
Yeah, it was easy for me to do. I was, like I said, I was at a bottom point. I didn't want to do this anymore. It was 19 years, and there had been cycles of ups and downs through that. My family had been like, you have other things to do. So you, I'm stubborn as hell, tenacious and stubborn. And so there was this bit of me going like, this has to continue forever.
Now, the
I don't know
work's not done
why.
yet.
The work's
Forever.
not done yet. We're not back to what we were before, and we're not. Maybe other agencies are doing this, and I want to do that too. I didn't really want to do that, but like I have to do that. So there were a lot of stories going on, and so I just got to a point where I had to do something. So I would have rather made this decision 5 years earlier. We would have had, there would have been a bigger buyout, but maybe there wouldn't have been anyone to buy that out. So for me, it was really, I didn't want to do this anymore, but we had set up something of value and they saw that and they wanted to keep going. And I had these other things that were making me money and that were going to keep growing. So it just provided room to make these decisions really easy. And I really cared about the people that were going to take over. I had worked with them for a really long time. I wanted them to be successful but really the other investments just made it very easy.
For you to support them in a financing model that allowed them to buy it from you safely. And then if headwinds and challenges show up, they just call Jamie and go, hey, we got this going on in the business. We're going to make some modifications. And you trust them to continue to improve the business and pay you off for the buyout, which gives them so much more flexibility than a banker down the community, bank saying, hey, no flexibility.
Yeah.
You gave money, now you got to take it. Did you learn about this as an option? Many people don't think of employee buyouts or team member buyouts when they're thinking about selling their business. How did you learn about this? And then are you a champion of this model for a lot of people now?
Yeah. We had worked on an employee ownership program for a really long time and never got to it. I was always trying, I wanted the employees, well, I wanted to create a company where they were there for a really long time and had buy-in and could help me lead it and help me grow it. But it never really coalesced. And I think a lot of owners want people to have the same commitment and accountability that they do. And if they would all be running their own business anyway. And so that just it never worked. And every time we talked about it, it didn't feel like it was going to produce the results that I wanted. That being said, I didn't think of this. Like I stepped down. I was like, y'all run it. I think I'm coming back in 90 days, but I don't know if I'll be rejuvenated and ready to battle the dragons or you're just doing such a good job. I'll back out. And so they came to me. The new owners came to me and said, this is what we'd like to do. I didn't really think about it at the time that they would want to do that. I had approached two of them over the years and say, hey, if you'd like to invest in this company, you can, and we can be part owners. I'm doing these other things over here, and there's an opportunity. And no one really seemed to find
Stepped up.
interest. Yeah, no one
Yeah.
stepped up until that time. I'm a huge advocate of two things: making sure you take your profit and go find other ways to have that work for you, because that opens up something like this. You do this for a living. There's so many agencies that they don't have this opportunity. Like it's either run that sucker until you have a heart attack and you have to stop, or you close it or you sell it. The two other organizations that were looking to acquire my previous agency, basically I was going to get a payout and then get a job. And I remember one kind of backhanded insult. He goes, you've built a really nice lifestyle business here, but we want to do something bigger. And I was like, wait, are you dogging on me because my lifestyle rocks? Because I love this lifestyle. It People don't get this opportunity. So I'm a huge advocate, but there were things that predicated that being an option. Like
Yeah.
if if I hadn't had taken a chance on this other business, and we've invested in five or six. One was wildly successful. One I spent almost $1 million on and it failed. I'm not very good at building software, and the others are still growing. So we've had successes and we've had failures. But if we hadn't taken that money out and done that, a flexible option that was, there are three people who own a company and it's growing and they're doing great and they'll be able to benefit from that whereas they wouldn't have before. My family still benefits from those residuals and then paying that off. I get to see that company still exists, something I poured my heart and soul. My wife poured her heart and soul. The kids watched us build. We get to see that still out in the wild doing great things. So I'm a huge advocate of it. And the other thing that needs to happen, I believe, you have to have really good systems and processes because you're going to hire people to run those things. And that's where there were parts of it like had to be Jamie. Jamie had to go in there and figure out our way of doing things. And then I had to train people on those ways of doing things and the ways of continuing to build those ways and improve those ways. And once that machine started rolling, when I stepped down, they didn't miss a beat. The only calls I fielded after that were I was managing one account at the time. And so is a couple questions when management, someone's managing account leaves. Other than that, it was really the deal. They done such a good job. We've had very few conversations, not even five. I can't count them on one hand. Wouldn't even fill up all my fingers there of stuff they needed. They just did it. So you put all those things together and then the options present itself. Kind of, it's kind of like, luck is the intersection of opportunity and preparedness. The company was prepared to do this. They saw an opportunity and pitched it to me. I was like, yes, it's a great idea. Let's do this.
I typically ask owners to imagine that they own a holding company and the business that is actually their lifestyle is one asset in that holding company. And that thought exercise gets them to think about, well, if the profits roll up to the holding company, I would reinvest those profits into other assets that, hopefully generate cash flow. And then if I got to a certain point where the portfolio generated enough cash flow for it to be meaningful, I could divest the current lifestyle business and have an acceleration or be able to put energy into other things I'm more interested in. And so it sounds like you experienced that in kind of real time since you didn't have the strategy about doing it, right? If looking back, you look brilliant. Like Jamie had the strategy. He'll extract cash flows after a lifestyle business. He'll reallocate that capital to a variety of different projects. And then one becomes more successful and grows. And therefore this business that really holds all this stress and tension that you founded and emotionally connected to goes, it's not that meaningful within the portfolio.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll divest this thing. And who's the right buyer? Well, if I went to market, I don't like what people don't understand. I've got offers before. The people who currently run it would be great people to buy it. All this sounds brilliant, Jamie, if you look back and rewrite history. Yeah. But it's true. It's such a great path for people to take.
Yeah.
Especially
and I had
if
to
you put in the years.
Yeah. And I looking back, I look like the man. Like I made some really good
Brilliant.
decisions, but it took me, I had to be just crushed and really not knowing what to do. And I had some really good people in my life that were like, this is what you need to do. But yeah, there were kind of some accidental stuff, but I love that analogy. And I had a mentor, he was on my board for a long time and we were talking about wealth building and he saw me like, I look back at our conversations now and I just laugh because I have those conversations from his perspective with entrepreneurs now. And, he drew me out a picture and it was one of those big earth movers, the big dump trucks that'll haul like, 100 tons. I don't even know. They're huge and work in mines. And he's like, is it more important to be the owner of that or the guy driving it? And it took me months to figure out what the hell he was talking about, but he was talking about control versus ownership. And that kind of opened me up to like, oh, do I own the business or the business own me right now? If I owned this business and I acted like the one in control, what would I be doing? And so that kind of opened up to like, well, I got these other things that I should be driving right now. And one is hauling a lot more dirt than this one. And just like your analogy, it really opened up. And I think we get so tied as entrepreneurs, our value, our identity to the company that we started, that it doesn't even occur to us that this thing should be working for us and not us working for it. And so for a long time, that agency owned me. I remember my oldest kid, it was his senior trip, senior in high school. And my wife said, "We're going on a senior trip." And I was like, "But I can't." She goes, "I'm not asking you. We're going on a senior trip. Here are the dates. We'd love for you to go. There's a seat in the car, but we're going." And that was all about like I hadn't she would say, "Let's go on vacation." I can't go. I have this thing I got to keep running, this machine I got to keep running. And we get so tied to that. This is who I am. I am JEB Commerce. I am this agency, that we don't look at it and go, we should be taking the profits and going make that money work somewhere else as well. And I did after a while start looking when we started that business, have a finance degree. So they often talk about spreading your risk over different asset classes. And so I then had two businesses. So I was a little bit, I'm forgetting the word,
A little less concentrated in one area. Yeah.
little less concentrated with two businesses, but I was still concentrated in one asset class. And then you have your 4K and things like that. And then we invested in some real estate. And so now we have that risk spread out quite a bit. And I think as business owners, I think you got to think of that early. I wish I had done that
Yeah.
from the beginning, because we
Isn't
would
it
have had
crazy?
twice
You
as.
had you had an education in finance, and then entrepreneurship just makes you drunk with work and effort and hustle, and you just throw out all that practical good advice.
It does, and you forget like every single thing that you were
Yeah,
taught.
everything.
I remember working the spreadsheets and coming up and going, well, I'm gonna have $50 million by the time I'm 40. This is how we're gonna do it. And then you start running a business and you just start getting hit in the face. Was it Mike Tyson who said everyone's got a plan till you get punched in the face? And as an entrepreneur, that you wake up, show up at the office, you have a plan every day, and then you get punched in the face. So it that
Yeah.
definitely takes it out the door. If we had done that early on, our family wealth and some of the businesses would be so much better. We would have invested back in early and more instead of taking out.
Well, the philosophical question about this relationship as a business owner and their business, right? Do you own your business or does your business own you? And what is the catalyst? What is the thing that makes you aware of where you're at in that question? And then the next one is you don't know the solution. So who do you have as your advisors? Who do you have
Yeah.
around you who helps you either see that and then find a solution for it? Sounds like you had one though. That's an important attribute that entrepreneurs need to have around them.
Yeah, and I think that is one thing, if I'm able to toot my own horn from the beginning, and it's been something that I've used. I've had the benefit of growing up in a family where we all talk business all the time. So I had a built-in mentor in my father and also my two sisters. So they're all in business and all do very, very well. And so these are things we all kind of talked about, leadership and all that. But it was always a concept in my family, like, you don't have to do this alone. You go find wise counsel and search that out. So we had a board early on at that agency, and those individuals helped me greatly with just figuring some sort of stuff out. That being said, sometimes you just have to go through it. Now, they were all telling me all the things. It took me forever. My dad would tell me, look, you got to get processes and systems, Jamie. You're gonna you are driving yourself crazy. And I'm like, my dad was in manufacturing. This is marketing. He doesn't know. And I had someone else tell me the same thing. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. And so you kind of have to be ready for it, but especially as founders and CEOs, we're kind of accountable to nobody, and that
Yep.
can be really dangerous. So
Yep.
I either had a board, I sought out mentorship, and those mentors I still talk to today, or I hired a coach. And so I hired a coach at the E-Myth for a long time. He moved out. I stayed with him for 5 years. Then I worked with another coach, and pretty much I would say more than 50% of my professional career, I had a coach that I paid. 100% of my career, I had a group of wise mentors men and women, different stages, I had marketing people and business people, manufacturing people. I had a bunch of different people able to speak into my life. And that did help the business continue to grow and get us in a spot where we could have this exit.
Now, what I hear you saying is investing in someone to hold you accountable, someone you don't want to disappoint, someone who helps you
Yeah.
see around corners. And even if they tell you to do something and you still got to experience it firsthand for yourself, you still, from a pattern and from a process, have a higher probability of surviving your own experimentation because they're there to back you. And that's invaluable for any entrepreneur.
100%. And we often want to avoid conflict, avoid the suck, avoid the hard things. But there's a stoic phrase that obstacle is the way. And it took me a long time to figure out what that was. But sometimes you can't become who you want to become unless you're hurting, unless you're struggling, unless all those things. And a good coach and a mentor, sometimes they'll tell you like this, you're going to go down this road and it's going to be awful and you could do this and avoid it, and they'll share that with you. And other times they know he's got to they got to go through this, so I'm not going to say anything because I can't teach him this. Life is going to the universe life his experience is going to teach him this. And I was blessed with a ton of those.
Yeah. Uh, why should a founder decide not to entertain an employee buyout? What are the things that makes it challenging, in your opinion, for others to take the path you took?
I think if the business relies on the personality a lot, so I'm a founder and you haven't done any sort of dry runs of you being gone and come back and it's been successful, if they can't run it for 2 weeks while you're gone, they're not going to run it successfully unless you're getting all of it up front through their loan. You're not going to get your money either. So I think that's one big thing. It's not a systematic business, it's going to be really hard for anybody, employee or otherwise, to take that over. I think it would be tough if they needed me. There's a bit of, they bought the business and then I'm gone. They haven't called, and that's fine. I'm really proud of them. But they've been able to have that autonomy, and they proved that before. They proved it before I stepped down for a sabbatical. They proved it before that they could manage everything. So I think if you haven't done any dry runs with those staff, if you don't have a leadership team. One of the buyers, he had run his company before I hired him. He had a company and he had an exit. So he had experience running and leading and being an entrepreneur. And I think that really helped as well. But I think the main things is your business isn't systematized. Um, that's going to be really hard for anyone to take it over.
Yeah. It's interesting. You don't often hear founders teaching their leadership team how to potentially buy the business from them, which fundamentally would be a very productive exercise.
I think so. Yeah.
So rather than just entertaining an employee ESOP or, Jack Stack, great game of business, everyone kind of has a piece of the business and runs it and has their expertise. There's this kind of delta between owners and employees, the people who, work in the business and those who own the business. I'm really curious about the future of our service industry in an AI world, the issues we have with removing entry-level talent. You now have a
Yeah.
bunch of businesses that are going to transition, but not a lot of youth to really prop up the industry moving forward. So it'd be great if the founders had this kind of temperament, which was not buy then built to sell, but what if I just teach my team to buy the business from me to transition it? And what does that need to look like for them to be successful in doing so? And then what systems do need to be really ironed out and tested for us to have a high probability of success and without me burdening the next generation, right? That's kind of like the aging society question. Like, we don't want to be a burden to our children or the younger generation. And then if we want our business to survive, we don't want to burden it with too much debt or push these people to be unsuccessful.
Yeah. And I think you're 100% right. And I think there's a bunch of people like me that just turned 50. They're around 50. We all started our agencies when the internet was really starting to click together. And a lot of us are trying to figure out what do we want to do. And so I would expect there's a ton trying to figure out what to do. And it's hard to sell to an outside agency or a holding company or an equity firm without having to stay there for another period of time. And that can be a lot of what I didn't want that. Like I would have closed the business and walked away instead of working for somebody else. Like I'm ruined. I am now, if I have to work to support my family, I'll go get a job. I will do that. I'll say that, honey, if you're watching this, I will do anything to make that mortgage. But I'm probably the worst employee you'd ever have because I'd be like, they'd be trying to find me. I'm like, Jamie, it's 2 o'clock. I'm like, yeah, but I had this thing I wanted to go do today. So, but I think everyone's got to kind of figure that out. There's a lot of opportunity there. And I think we do have, I've read a lot about succession and it's so hard to make it right. And I would have loved for one of my four kids to want to do marketing and sell women's clothing online and keep things going. That didn't happen. And I think there is a responsibility for us as business owners to the business we created, the people who are in it, to put it in a place where it can continue. And if you're too heavy debt laden, you're not going to be able to make a deal, make an exit like this. If you're never invested in anything else, you're going to ride this sucker until Social Security kicks in, and you hope you paid off your house and all those. Like you're just going to take from it. So inadvertently, we did create something that was able to continue. We were lucky and smart with the opportunities that presented itself, so that the business, this thing that we put our heart and soul in it for 19 years, so that can continue, and there are options. So I bet there's a ton of founders that are right here.
Thousands.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, thousands. This your story, especially in the dawn of internet marketing and technology, emerged so many entrepreneurs, so many
yeah,
people who could create their
yeah,
own fortunes and lifestyles, create their own livelihood because the internet allowed you to.
yeah,
And now you're at a stage of life where if you didn't reap the benefit during that period of time, you could potentially get into a last or final deal that's not your best.
yeah. And there's one other thing I wanted to say, and I think we talked about this in the prep call. There there was one reason that I stayed in the agency. Maybe I can't say too long because I've had a great exit. But I stayed there. I dealt with a lot of stress, and it was that reason was fear. I didn't think I could create anything else. I just thought lightning's not going to strike again. This is the thing that I did. This is what I'm known for. I was so afraid that I'd have to find out who the hell was I outside of this company, and I would never have another idea again that would take off, or I'd be too tired to do it or burnt out, or I would never be able to create something new. I stepped down on, like, I think it was the first of July. The company I'm now running, I launched 3 days later. There was no space in my head, and there's no emotional space for creativity to happen. So for those other founders that are around my age that came about during this amazing time of innovation and creativity, like, we built all this stuff. You're going to come up with something else. If you need it, you're going to come up with something else. And right now you're not coming up with those things because you're just driving this truck until the wheels fall off. Let the people you probably trained, you got there, let them take over and go do something else. We created 3 companies since I stepped down, and it's been fun as hell. And I get to do what I love and what I'm really good at: starting things, building those systems, and then moving on and starting something else.
For that 30 something operator, the people you employed
Yeah.
inside of an agency, what message do you give to them about maybe knocking on the 50-year-old, 60-year-old owner's office door or Zoom and proposing this?
Just do it. Like, go do it. They're not gonna, the worst they're gonna do, like, the worst is laugh at you and say, I'm never doing that. Leave me alone. That's the worst. But every owner I've ever worked with, and when an employee came to me and said, I want your chair, I want to do this, or I want to start my own agency, or I had many come to say, I want to be the director of marketing at a company like Hilton Hotels or Dick's Sporting Goods. I've loved seeing that from somebody. And then I just spent all my time, all my dev with them of like, okay, how do we get there? You want my chair? Great. Well, let's work on a couple year plan or a year plan, whatever that is, wherever you are. Let's work on a plan because now you're going to need to know accounting. You're going to need to know marketing. You're going to have leadership opportunity. And these are the things I'm going to need to see out of you. A good leader, a good founder will embrace that. Does that mean you get the opportunity in the end? You may not, but either way, you're going to be way more employable and maybe you'll be ready to start your own thing. But I would say go talk to them, especially if you see the owner struggling to come in. You can kind of feel like they would rather be doing something else. That's a perfect time. Go in there and ask them, what's their ideal next 5 years, and bring the subject up. Like, I didn't think about it. They came to me and they asked me, what do you want? And I was like, ideally, this is what I want. They're like, great, let's talk about that. We'd like to do that. And I think, there are creative ways. Probably the 30 something, and me as 30 something, I would never have thought I could afford to buy a company that did $1 million or $10 million. And my dad would always say when I was running that agency, he goes, you should go look at the other big agencies and buy them. I'm like, well, they're doing 5 times the revenue. How am I going to buy them? Well, financing, there's creative financing. There's a bunch of different ways you can do it. This particular group of employees used the revenue of the company I built to pay me off. That was great. I got what I wanted. I got an exit. I get to talk to you about an exit. I get to, talk to my friends that I exited a company. I get paid and they get to use the goodwill and the expertise and the brand that we built over that time. And then we built together to grow their personal wealth and grow that, keep growing that company and earn a living. So there's a lot of creative ways. If both parties want to do it, there's a way to figure that out. And you may find that getting a loan from a bank is the only way, or the SBA, and that may not be as hard as you think. There are a couple times we didn't go through the SBA for a loan for certain things because someone just said it's a really long process. Well, yeah, borrowing money is a long process. I didn't buy a house because someone told me a jumbo loan's not worth I don't even know what the hell a jumbo loan is. Someone told me there's a jumbo loan and you can't go get it. So there was a whole period of time we would have had this 10-acre ranch 5 years, 6 years earlier. But so sometimes someone will say something and it's not true. Go to the SBA, go to your bank, go find a good banker, talk about those things. And you may find that this is a lot closer to happening than you ever thought. Like, do the research. And now we have so many tools to go out. I mean, use AI. I want to buy this business. It's generating this much. Well, how do I do this? There's so many ways to do that, but just go talk to the owner. Let them know what you want to do.
And then the last message is speak to that owner who got that 30-year-old to knock on his door, and they're like, I don't want to get paid from my own business, or I don't want to sell today, or I don't want you to know about the business that potentially you want to buy. Coach that owner who's got that 30-year-old knocking on the door, interested in taking over.
Yeah, there will be a time where you don't want to come into the office anymore, and you prepare for that time now. So you may really love what you're doing and want to stay there. And maybe that's the way it's going to be forever, and that's okay. But your company's going to grow faster, be stronger if you work with those people under you. So hire good people, train them on everything that you do, teach them how to interpret everything that you're interpreting. And that's going to give you more freedom because maybe you do like what you're doing. But if you only had to be there 5 hours a week, maybe you'd be creating 10 times the wealth for you and your family. And then maybe you would, like you were talking about, see that holding company. So you're going to have all benefit and no downside to preparing your company and your staff for something like this. Because you're going to have staff who understands all the numbers and everything that's going on way better. They're going to feel empowered to come to you with more things. And you may find a situation where you want to exit, but how you feel now, that's how you feel now. There were many times where, man, I was loving everything that I did and everything that we were doing, and I would never have thought of walking away. In fact, there was a time where I heard someone say, if you built a company you really love, why would you sell? Because you succeeded. So why wouldn't you keep doing that? Well, success looks a lot different for a lot of people. Sometimes, you don't have to keep working. You can go do other things. So I would say you're getting no downside by preparing for this. And that's like that book, Built to Sell. And there's a couple others. You don't have to sell. And I think one of the stories in that, the guy eventually didn't sell in the analogy. He built a business that he loved and he kept it. So your business is going to be stronger, but you may find a group of people that want to take over for you and the business will pay for itself. And if you're managing it all really well, you may have a large sum of cash in there to take out anyway. And then you got all these other things going on because you spent your money right and you invested in other things. And now you are a holding company with different assets producing different things. And that may change how you look at it.
Wonderful. Jamie, if someone's listening to this and says, well, what's he doing now? What's that look like? And then if they want to reach out to you, how best can they do that? Since your agency email probably doesn't work anymore.
It still works, but doesn't come to me. So I'm making a lot of wine. I am showing horses as often as my wife will allow. My whole family does that. But I started a company called Equine Rev Share. So I married two of my passions of affiliate marketing and horses. I saw 3 days later, I was talking to one of our trainers and she's like, hey, I need this for your horse. Your daughter needs this, your son needs this, and your wife needs this. And I was like, can you just send me a link? And she's like, sure. So I watched her teach a lesson, then sit on a horse and spend 20 minutes trying to find all these links, send them to me. And then it just hit me like, why she's not making anything on these hot referrals. And I've probably spent tens of thousands of dollars off of links her and other trainers have sent me. So right then, equinerevshare.com came about. And then I've invested in two other companies. One is a horse show apparel company, and one is an education company for the horse community. So kind of sticking in there. And the company I invested in, Renewed Horizons, excuse me, that's still going strong. I'm there 2.5 days a week, and the team there is phenomenal. But if they need to get a hold of me, would like to learn more about what we're doing, you can email me at jamie@equinerevshare.com. You can put Jamie Birch in Facebook and anywhere. I'm Wine and Horses on TikTok if you want to follow horse and wine stuff. I post stupid, silly stuff there all the time.
Perfect. Jamie, thank you so much for sharing and
You're
giving an
welcome.
option to the founder who just didn't think they had options.
Awesome.
Much
Awesome.
appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
If you like this episode, probably like one of our other episodes, click here.